Hi everyone, Nemo here. What a week it has been, and many members across the world, UK, Europe, anywhere, they all just want to help. Of course, we're talking about the conflict that is currently raging in Ukraine, but more importantly, we're talking about the unfolding humanitarian crisis that it is causing. And so we've gathered together tonight to talk about what we can do. To all those who want to help, we want to help you help. So I'm going to bring everyone in. Here we all are. Please unmute yourselves. Say hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
Right. And kicking us off tonight will be Julian. Julian, please kick us off.
Yeah, so I had my Nick Fury moment this week. I've got a little button on my phone that I can press, and magically all the Brit Vengers appear. Because I really wanted to. I thought it was really important that we have a little bit of a chat about what we can do, what we can say on what's a really important matter, and obviously the most important thing that's going on at the moment. And I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about the best way that we can help in this situation. Now, I know that there are going to be lots of people. It's all over social media. It's all over the news. We know there are lots of people that have seen what's going on and want to do something. And I just thought it was really important to say that the best thing that you can possibly do. There's lots of things that we can do. The best thing that we can do is to donate money to those charities that have a feet on the ground presence, either in Ukraine or in the countries bordering the Ukraine, that can see what the need is and that can make sure that the money is going to the people that need it most. Now, I know that sounds like a really obvious thing to say, and you might wonder why the Brit Vengers are getting together to share that. But I know that a lot of people that I know, a lot of members of the church, family, friends, are going to be thinking, well, I want to do something about this, and so they're going to donate to the humanitarian aid fund. So they're going to tick that box on their tithing slip, and are going to donate money to the humanitarian aid fund. And I thought it was really important to say, please don't do that. It's fantastic. Anybody that wants to be charitable in any way, I think that's wonderful. And I think that donating money to humanitarian aid is a lovely idea, but it is not the best way to get that money, to get that help to the people that need it most. I know that there have been
Have we lost Julian? We've lost Julian. We'll bring him back in just a moment. We're talking about humanitarian aid fund tonight. I think it's really important right off the bat just to separate what the church does in terms of their tithing. Julian, are you back?
I am, yeah. Sorry, where did you lose me?
Well, I lost you mid-diatribe, so I'm not sure where we lost you. Hang on, let's bring you back. Julian, take it away about how humanitarian aid is not the best place for people.
Yeah, sorry. I know that a lot of people are going to think that that's the best way, and in some ways the easiest way to just, when they're filling out the tithing slip, to just tick that box and donate some money. But it's not the best way to get the money to the people that need it most. One of the problems with the charitable work of the LDS Church is that the church is not very transparent. So if you go to any of the websites that give guidance on where the best place to donate your money is, they none of them will recommend the LDS Church. Now, I'm not suggesting that's because the LDS Church aren't doing any good. It's because they're not transparent about how they do their humanitarian aid work. Now, we know that in the UK, that, and I mean, if you don't mind, I'm going to share a bit of a personal story.
Please do. Please do.
So a few years ago, my mum died, and shortly after my mum's death, myself and all of my siblings were gathered round at my dad's house, and already people were starting to go through things of my mum's, and they found a tithing receipt for £1,000. Now, I'm one of 9 children. It's a big family. Never really had a lot of money, and my mum was very good at making what little money she had go a long way. And so I know that £1,000 was a huge sacrifice on my mum's part. But she did it because she was one of the most charitable and caring people that I've ever known. And So we were sat round, and my dad was telling this story about how my mum had seen on the TV an appeal to help. There was some humanitarian disaster. I can't remember what it was, but some humanitarian disaster that was going on at the time. And my mum had seen that and thought, I want to do something to help. Like many of us are seeing now with what's going on in the Ukraine, touched by what we see, and we want to do something to help. And so apparently she phoned up several charities and said, look, I want to donate money, but I want to make sure it goes directly to that particular need. And the charities that she contacted said, well, we can't really do that. We can't give you that guarantee. We are helping out with lots of different things, and we can guarantee your money will go to a good cause, but we can't guarantee that it will go to that particular cause. And then my dad went on to tell the story about how she then contacted the church, and they said, the church said, yes, we absolutely can 100% guarantee that your money will go to the people that you saw in that video and to that particular need. Now, I had to sit there with everybody else, so they were all thinking how wonderful that is, and and obviously it was a great thing that my mum felt that the desire to do that, but also there was this kind of underlying thing of, isn't it brilliant that the church could do that? It was the only organisation that could do that. Unfortunately, I knew that wasn't true, because in the UK we do have to be transparent about our funding. And so, I know that the money that has been donated in the UK to the Humanitarian Aid Fund just sits in a bank account, pretty much. And I'm sure there are people here that can go into a bit more detail about that. Now, that's not to say that the church isn't donating that money, but what it does mean is that money that members in the UK are donating to the Humanitarian Aid Fund is not going to where we want it to go. It's not going to the people that need it most. And I think that's a really important message that people need to hear. I'm not saying this to in any way try to criticise the church. That's not the point. The point is we want to get money to the people that need it, and everybody that is donating money wants the same thing. All want the same, and by far the best way to do that is to donate it to charities that are that have got that feet on the ground presence. There are lots of websites that will help give suggestions of charities that are very transparent and that do make sure that the vast majority of those donations goes to where it needs to go. So I just felt it was really important for us to have that discussion, and that for me is the main message. If you want to help, that's what you need to do.
Brilliant. And I just want to reassure people tonight that any money that is donated through the chat tonight will not be going to me. I will be sending it straight to the Red Cross. So please be charitable in giving and know that money will go to a good cause tonight. That is my promise to you all. So with that, if you hear nothing else tonight, what Julian just said should be your take-home message. If you want to do well, if you want to do good for the people of Ukraine, if you want to help in this current humanitarian crisis that we're facing, don't give your money to the church. We have no proper guarantees that it will go there or anywhere, because since 2011, a fund has grown to about £5 million sat in a bank account, HSBC. So, if you really want to help, don't send it to the church. I just want to talk really quickly about the way the church's money works. The way the church's money works is that your tithing money goes to Salt Lake. Salt Lake takes in about $7 billion of tithing. They take $1 billion out of that, put it into Ensign Peak. They use the remaining $6 billion to run the church. That's the operating cost of the church. What I've been arguing for a while is that the Ensign Peak Fund makes about $7 billion a year. So you could spend $6 billion of that on operating the church and then retain $1 billion and your fund would continue to grow. But more importantly than any of that is that the humanitarian aid the church does not come from your tithing money. That is a very important point that will underpin everything we talk about tonight, is that church tithing money does not get used for charitable purposes. LDS Philanthropies is the organization, Latter-day Saint Charities it's now called. Latter-day Saint Charities has separate legal standing to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It is separately funded. Its money comes from surplus donations. It comes from direct donations from church members. So if you sit back and think, well, I've paid my tithing, so that's going to help people in Ukraine, it won't. And it never has helped anyone other than members of the church, because it goes directly into our own operating funds. So essentially what tithing is it pays for our buildings and it pays for us all to be able to go to church and feel like we're charitable. So that's my point. And I think that naturally actually leads into a point that PD has been making in our kind of get-togethers before this. So I want him to dive in on that, please.
Yeah, hello everyone. I think following on from Julian as well with the story this week, having been a TBM for so long, me and Sister PD were talking about the church and their response to things or non-response and giving them a hard time. And I think some members of the ward had started to collect things together. And Sister PD said to me, well, what are we doing? You know, if we were at church, we'd be paying our tithing, etc., and we'd be doing that. But now that we're not at church, have we become less charitable? And that kind of struck me a little bit, that what are we doing? So I then went looking for charities, etc., as Julian says, that we can donate through. And I took the children to a shop yesterday, and we were filling up a trolley full of materials that had been requested, first aid kits, toiletries, things like that, to send to the border with Ukraine using our local Ukrainian community center. And I saw my sister-in-law there who was also collecting. She had a basket, and I said jokingly to her, put your basket down, go get a trolley. And it wasn't until afterwards that it kind of struck me the reason that she only had a basket. And that is because as a TBM, they are still paying 10% of their income at least to the church that goes to build great and spacious buildings. And on top of that, the church is asking them to give to the humanitarian aid fund, to give their fast offering, etc. Now, they're probably, as a TBM, you probably pay more to charity than the average person does in a lifetime. And that's great. And it gives you a great feeling of satisfaction. But what it means is that at times of crisis like this, when there is a humanitarian crisis, you're less inclined to give money to other charities because you think, well, I'm already giving to the church and they'll sort it out. You leave the responsibility with the church, and we know that they won't. Nemo, did you have my visual?
I'm trying to get it now. If you've got it, please feel free to screen share it.
Yeah, let's just have a quick look.
Put it down here. I'll pop it on there.
So I came up with a lovely, I guess, a lovely new name for the church, one that we can all share.
Because we know the church loves nicknames, right?
Yeah,
it's their special favorite thing.
This is a new one for them. Yeah, everyone should enjoy this. So I labeled the church to be a charity whale, that the church sucks up all of the donations and leaves nothing behind for any other charity. And I put together this little visual if we get there.
We got there. No, it's not coming up on my end.
Okay.
It's all right.
Okay.
I'll share it a little bit later.
Okay. But the church is a whale when it comes to charity. They take up all the real estate from the members and leave nothing behind for the people that are actually making the difference and that are actually going to be helping these people. So charity whale.
It's a great point. It's a great point because it can make us less inclined to give if we feel like we're already giving, even if that is not the case, as we've shown. Jane, tell us how you're feeling about all this, please.
The clean version is that I'm feeling extremely frustrated and angry. To what PD was saying, absolutely, I believe when I donate through the humanitarian aid slip that is the preferred methods of donation, because the church is run by priesthood. It's therefore led by God, and that money is going to be used in the best possible way. No, it isn't. The UK donations are sitting in a bank account. The bank account has been accruing money since Light the World campaigns several years ago, and possibly even longer. We're going to, we're going to be speaking to that just shortly, but this is a fact. Let me tell you something that I believe about God. I choose to have faith in God. You don't have to, whatever higher power or energy in the universe that you believe is ordering things. I believe in a creator God who is creative. I believe that when they put opportunities in your path to solve problems, to serve the humanity, to do good, I believe in a God who addresses these things creatively through us. I remember having a conversation with someone who was talking about how they had little money to be able to help when they saw someone who was homeless, and they were on their own with a young child, and they had no money to be able to spare to donate. And she had said, I asked myself, what would Jesus do if he were here? And she felt that, well, Jesus would go and talk to that person. The ways that God addresses pain amongst his children is so creative that it cannot be limited to one organization, whether that's the church or not, whether you have absolute faith in how the humanitarian aid project is running. God expects you to take opportunities that he presents to you. That's my opinion. What is appalling to me is when we believe that money is being given, especially when it's being given from people's poverty, and is being withheld, is not going where it by law, in the UK charity law, it legally has to do the job that you donated that money for. Those are restricted funds. So churches don't get to say we can change your mind or it can go for something else. If you donate it for a specific purpose, those are restricted funds and have to be used by law in that way. And so for money to be sitting for at least 5 years, the amount of humanitarian crises there's been within that time, and now we have one on the doorstep. I am angry because we're having a worldwide fast this weekend. And what comes with that is the requirement, the encouragement, maybe obligation. If you have made temple covenants, the obligation for you to accompany your fasting and your prayers with financial donations, the cost of those meals more generously if you possibly can. And the British Saints, saints worldwide, are generous in those donations. We're being asked to donate money that is never going to get to where it needs to go. It's going to add to that £5 million. So what I would like to happen is for the church to release that £5 million with immediate effect to where it needs to go. Specifically, I'm asking for it to be released to Ukraine, but certainly at least to be used for its charitable purposes. Friend of the Brit Vengers, Debbie Shrub, had given me permission to use this phrase that she had shared with us earlier. And she pointed out that it's great that the church is in such a strong position to be extremely generous in financial aid. Absolutely it is. There are few organisations who have the ability to do and the resources to do what the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can do. I am asking you to do what you say that you're going to do. It's not been done yet. I'm asking that you would do that. And I'm asking members, if you have not, if you're planning to donate to humanitarian aid, ask your church leaders. ask them if they can, speak to their line leaders, their file leaders. We need that money to go where it's supposed to.
Yeah, and we'll come to in a moment a letter that has been written in a pro forma way that you can all get involved with. You can all take that and send it to your stake president. It will lay out the argument. It will lay out the point that we want the church to stop being one of these, a charity whale, and we want them to start sharing what they have. It's interesting that in the letter from the Europe area presidency, they said one of the divinely appointed missions of the church is to care for those in need. Divinely appointed missions of the church. Great. That's a proper mandate, that is. So let's see them do it. Let's encourage them to do it. Like Jane says, few organizations have the amount of money the church has. And yet, since 1985, they've spent $2.5 billion on charitable work. When, if you check out my petition, which is getting a bit of a revival at the moment, we'll see that they could do $7 billion of good each year in the charitable sector. Julian, you look like you're going to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I don't want to turn anybody off by thinking that this is just, us getting together to criticise the church. I know that the church are going to help. I know that the LDS, certainly I have every faith that the LDS charities will donate money to the Ukraine. But I just think, for me, this is all in the spirit of, I think it might have been Dallin H. Oakes that gave that talk about good, better, best. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. It is. It's Dallin H. Oakes.
Yeah, good, better, best. Yes, donating money to the church through humanitarian aid is a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But something we just want to recommend something that is better and really something that is the best, and that is to donate that money to those feet on the ground charities.
Quite right. I think it's important to kind of lay the background as to why we want the church to do good and to encourage them to do as much as they can. But that, like you said, I think that only goes so far. And the absolute best thing you can do is just take control yourself of where your donations go and where your money goes, and be responsible. And be responsible no matter what you're donating to in the future. Anything you're donating to, make sure that the charity you're donating to is transparent. Which you should expect from any charitable organisation, that they're transparent with their financial figures. That's what you would want.
Can I just say quickly, I'm just reading Doug's comment, where he's saying the church could drop 1 billion easy. It's funny the reaction I'm having right now to listen to all this, although we've been discussing it. I actually feel physically sick to think the money that they have and the very little. Now, again, like Gillian said, they will be donating. But when you think of the amount of money that they have, can they not just do better? We're having to say to people, don't donate to the church, where we should be saying donate to the church because they should be putting it out there. And like everyone else, I grew up believing when I donated to humanitarian aid that money in good faith was going. And, I was thinking, the church are out there, look, they're out helping this place and that place. And now to hear the opposite side of that, in the pit of my stomach, being honest right now, I feel physically sick to think this was my church. This is who I gave my faith in. This is who I gave my life to, who my family gave their life to. And yet they're not being who they say they are. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, thank you. And I guess we go to Jane, and then I want Laura to kind of talk to us a little bit about what kind of other LDS movements are doing in these circumstances, before we then go to Peter and Lynn, who will run us through the wonderful pro forma letter. Jane, please.
And I just wanted to jump in quickly with already people will be seeing in their wards and stakes that great things are being done. Really great things are being done. Fantastic. Keep doing those really great things. When people are asking what's the plan, or maybe if nothing's being done yet, is something going to be done? And quite often what's being shared is information about how much the church has already donated to Ukraine or to humanitarian aid in that area. Now, what I've been seeing overwhelmingly is very, very old data, 10 years ago.
2014.
Absolutely. And so, you know, it's the idea that it's not being done yet right now. Of course, the church is going to donate to Ukraine. That is going to happen. But what I'm asking is, this is money that should have actually been doing its job a long time ago. I'm not happy to give more financial aid to the church to send that on if I know it's not going to be. So I think church members are under the impression that when that information's being shared, that, oh, actually we are doing all of these things. Sadly, we're not. So keep doing what you're doing in wards and stakes, but also keep in mind that you can ask what is happening with these donations right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And outside of the UK, even, please, you know, just because we have the financial transparency to be able to look and say, we know there's 5 million sat there, I would hazard a guess that in most countries there's a humanitarian aid pot of some kind. So ask your local leaders to inquire, find out how much is in it, what's it earmarked for, is there something else better than what's going on right now that it could be used for? And if not, then encourage those leaders to get permission to use it. And on that note, with this as being the way the LDS Church is doing things, Laura, could you run us through the way some of the other Mormon movements have been handling this?
Yeah, thanks for that. This is a little bit bitty because I'm kind of pulling from different sources here, but I think it's been a bit of an emotional week. We've seen the footage that we've seen. We've seen really personal stories of bravery, but just simple people protecting themselves, protecting their country. It's all been very emotional, and I think some of the things that's made me think through whether you are a literal believer in Jesus, or whether you believe in Christian principles, or whether just the idea of advocacy. I think we can all kind of pin those emotions a little bit on the idea of being advocates for people. And it's got me thinking through all that emotion, my frustration I share with you, Jane. Am I being unreasonable? Am I putting some unreasonable requests on the church? Is it even possible to do what I think that they should be doing? And so in kind of Sunstone form, we reached out to some other restoration movements that have roots with Joseph Smith as well, just to see what they're doing and how they view this crisis and how they would approach it. So one of the movements that we spoke to, these are all UK people. This is from the Remnant Church, which is a restoration movement that's inspired by Denver Snuffer. Now, I was having this backwards and forwards about the idea of the difference between tithing and alms and our responsibility as individuals. And as I was talking through it, it seemed to me that the way that they do it, that they have individual fellowships, and hopefully I'm representing them correctly, they have individual fellowships that they group together, and they have a real responsibility for how they tithe. So they will tithe together, and then they will talk about how they use that money, and they will use it for their whoever's in need. So they take very much the King Benjamin speak about imparting your substance to the poor, feeding hungry, clothing the naked, visiting the sick, administering relief. They're specific about doing it for that person and eliminating the middleman. When you have the middleman, i.e. a corporation or a fund, a humanitarian fund, that removes you from your obligation. The idea of that charitable experience, it being a transformative experience, changing your heart in some way. So these fellowships will get together and they will decide what they're going to do with that money, and it's spoken about, it's transparent, and so then they can then donate from there onwards. I had one of the quotes that I've got from here from Rock Waterman from Pure Mormonism page is, "Giving of alms isn't a duty God wants us to palm off on others and trust them to decide where their money goes. You should be the one to look. You should be the one to look for the need." So that was the Remnant movement, and that's how they would do it. I also reached out to the Community of Christ, who they they've acknowledged that they've got about 140 members over in the Ukraine. They've got their apostle Richard James, who is in communication with these members as much as possible, feeds back their personal experiences back to the rest of their Community of Christ saints, so they feel that connection with them. They have an immediate emergency fund available, and earlier on in this week, we're able to donate £20,000, 5,000, I think 4 lots of 5,000 to boots on the ground Polish and Ukrainian charities that are helping individuals that are immigrating out of Ukraine at the moment. And then I spoke to a couple of our children go to a Church of England school, and so we have lots of different Christian churches that go there. And so I spoke to a couple of the parents, and one of the women works for the Samaritan's Purse. And she said, she gave me a little bit of an idea that it's very common for churches to have disaster funds that are already there, ready to be given out straight away. But what struck me with all of these movements was the transparency, that if they're going to ask for an appeal, that it is if a member of their congregation gives an amount of money to the pastor or the bishop, whoever that might be, and says Ukrainian fund on there, that money, there's an expectation that it goes there, and that's where it will go. And that's the bit that struck me the most out of it all, the transparency. We got through, I think many members would have got through an email this week with several bullet points on there. We got ours from the stake. The number one on there was encouraging us to pay money, to give money charitably to the humanitarian fund. And it said on there that although there is no specific Ukraine fund, the church has already committed millions of dollars from the fund to relief efforts there. I really hope that that's true. I really hope that they have donated millions, but I don't see the evidence of that, certainly not from the UK fund. And I don't understand why we can't have a specific Ukraine fund when there's lots of other churches that are making that happen. It does feel a lot like, a big whale that is just eating away at it. And yeah, I want to think positively about it, but I didn't want to think. I had to question myself: was I being too harsh on the church? But it seems to me that there's a lot of other congregations here that have got their act together and are signposting their members straight to boots on the ground charities that are actually going to be able to give the money directly to the people.
And I would add, unless they are the Catholic Church, all of these organisations have less wealth than the LDS Church. All of these organisations are less well off. So, I think
point out.
Go on,
no, sorry. Just listening to what Laura said there, I think it is important to point out that this money, that this humanitarian fund in the UK, it's not the same as what Laura just talked about. Laura's talking about these churches and these organisations having a fund ready to deploy when the need is there. Money has sat in that bank account for about 10 years.
Let me be that boring guy. Let me explain. Let me read you the numbers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nima,
Okay.
Could I just ask as well, because I'm getting messages asking about where this information is. Where do we find,
It'll be in the show notes.
It's going to be in the show notes, but okay,
Yeah.
great.
But it is the register of charities.charitycommission.gov.uk. The Charity Commission is a government organisation that monitors any organisation that has charitable status in the UK, because one of the perks of being a charity, you don't pay tax. So what does the government want to do? Make sure that your charity is complying with the rules of being a charity. Otherwise, they want their tax money, right?
Yeah.
And so
I just say that with that law, they have to be very, very compliant with it, so that if any person at all just simply asks to see your annual report or your charity statement, which gets lodged every year with the Charities Commission, a separate one in Scotland, then they have to send that to you immediately. So we're able to see in black and white what has come in, what it's being spent on, what's going back out, and what's still in that account, to the point where we can tell you which bank account it's sitting in. What the bank is.
I can look at the balance beginning, incoming resources, transfers, expenditure, and a balance at the end of the year for each year back. Now, a lot of them are available till about, I believe, 2011 on the website. our friend Chris has got he's kept them essentially because he's been looking at this for a long time. So I've got the numbers here since 2007, which was the last time Salt Lake City pulled all the money out and took it to the States, and kind of just started the fund over. So it started in 2007. It kind of got to about 1 million, 1.2 million, and it's steadily grown by donations of anywhere from 300,000 to £500,000 a year. So members in the UK, which isn't a huge group of people, give humanitarian aid fund donations totaling around £500,000 a year on a good year. In 2018, £781,000 went in. That has grown and grown and grown and grown, and so the end balance in 2020 was £4,572,000. And we reckon that by 2021, when those numbers are released, it should be around 5 million, a square 5 million. So that's where we're getting this 5 million number from. There was an expenditure in 2020 of £186,000. Don't know where that went. And there was an expenditure in 2019 of £25,000 from donations of total of £500,000. But again, we don't know where that money goes. They haven't told us where that money's been spent. So even though they are spending some of it, the point is that most of it is accruing in a little nest egg, and we have no idea what is being done with it. And that's the thing that I want to promote, is I want to promote greater transparency. Or, as per my petition, if they won't give us that transparency, let us make the choice ourselves. Let us do the research into what are the most effective charities. And I would encourage you all to do that. Look, even outside of this crisis, look at which charities do the most good per dollar spent, which ones use the most of your money to do what they say they're going to do. There's websites that will tell you where to go. Because if the church isn't going to give us that transparency, we have to then make that decision to use our money better ourselves rather than trust them. Because how can you trust someone who doesn't tell you what they're doing with your money? I don't know.
Can I just address that point very quickly as well? Mm-hmm. Because I can hear the voices in my head. I know that some people are going to be listening to that thinking, well, this is because the church doesn't blow its own trumpets. The church doesn't broadcast all the good things that it does, because that's not why we do it. And that's a really lovely thought. It's nonsense. That's just not the case, because the church does talk about all the charitable work that it does. Just go on LDS Charities and it will tell you. We know what the figures are. We know that relative to the amount of money that the church has got, it's very, very little. What they donate is very, very little.
Julian, I can't believe that we've not yet seen pictures of missionaries handing out bottled water at a border town yet.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I found quite interesting. Just last night, I did a very quick search, just looked at several different charities. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. I know that Save the Children was one, British Red Cross was another one. All of them headline Ukraine Fund. That's their frontline page, the Ukraine Fund. Go on LDS Charities. Certainly, as of last night, there is no mention of Ukraine. Not even in the bit that says, latest news or whatever. There's not even any mention of Ukraine.
Right, hang on. One moment. Let me pull that up. I will do a quick screen share. And then we're going to go to Peter, because I'm aware we actually haven't heard from Peter. And that is a crying shame.
I'm not the waffly one. I keep telling Lynn, you listen. I'm not the waffliest one here. You can put your bells away.
Okay, so here we go. This is Latter-day Saint Charities, their webpage. If I accept the cookies and let the Chinese spy on me, then here we go. What's new? COVID-19.
Well, significantly, the letter from the Europe area presidency didn't name Ukraine. It talked in completely vague terms. It wouldn't even name Ukraine or Russia.
Yes, the letter from the first presidency and the Europe area, I believe. Neither of them named the actual areas involved.
So our assumption is because they're still trying to sort of suck up to dictators, so they can build a temple in their countries.
Don't get political.
It just got juicy, everyone. It just got good.
You keep them in line, Lynn.
No, I think something to be aware of at this point, though, is this whole thing this evening is not about the politics. It is not about who is right and who is wrong. And it could be, some people have mentioned what China are going to do in different parts of the world, etc. It is not about that. It is about fathers having to say goodbye to their children at the border because they have to go and fight for their homeland. It is about families who have had to leave everything behind and don't know if they're ever going to see their home again. That is what this is about. If it were anywhere else, you know, and we were able to see these things, maybe it's just because we can see it more now, and in the past we couldn't see it as much. But the emotion that comes with putting yourself in that situation, could I say goodbye to my children knowing that I might not see them again? You know, some of these people have waited days to cross the border into a country. They've waited in the snow and the cold because they just want to be safe. And if we can do anything to ease that suffering in the slightest way, then that's what we're here for. It's not to talk about who's right and wrong.
Yeah, agreed. And so I think what would be good now is if we can provide people a way to put some ideas to their local leaders about how we can free up this money to do some good. And Peter has a couple of suggestions of ways we can do that. Take it away.
Yeah, so let's be positive then. There's several strategies we can use to make the right thing happen. And we've established here that the church is in many ways not functional in making the right thing happen ethically. And to recap briefly, because I think it is important. It's important to understand the scales of money here. That the church takes all of our donations. On the donation slip, it has a caveat now on the bottom that's been there for a few years that says we will try and sort of use the money for the purposes you've given it for, but we can't guarantee it. So in reality, every penny you give to missionary fund, Book of Mormon funds, temple building fund, humanitarian aid, tithing and fast offering is actually treated by the church as one pot of money. It doesn't differentiate. It has to logistically differentiate in its declarations to the Charity Commission in Britain, which is why you can see a breakdown of the totals for each of those funds. But in how it handles the money, it doesn't. It's all one pot of money. It mushes it all together. It makes decisions later about how much to spend on each thing. And as we've heard, that on the whole, they get in live donations each year from the members around $7 billion. Total expenditure 5 or 6. The surplus $1 or $2 billion is invested in Ensign Peak, which earns enough every year to cover all the expenses of the church and have surplus without taking a penny of any donations from anyone. And that's been going on for over 20 years now, and has now reached a sum that's estimated to be around $140 billion. A billion is 1,000 million. In total, all the church claims to have given in humanitarian aid since when? What was the date?
1985.
Since 1985 is $2.5 billion. Now that breaks down as something like 57 million a year or something, or, you know, a lot. And what we're talking about here is proportionality. The amount the church, despite all its huge publicity, self-congratulating about its humanitarian aid interventions, which any active member of the church will repeat to you verbatim, is microscopic. Tiny percentages of the wealth it has as disposable income after all the other expenditures of the church. This is purely commercial investments. And the amount that those very people gave each year, they have billions surplus every year. They could give all of that right now to Ukraine. They could intervene in a massive way. And what they're doing is asking for more money, as if they can't do that unless we give more now in response to this appeal. And that is the fundamental ethical car crash of what's been going on a small cap scale for us with our 5 million in Britain, but on a gargantuan scale with what they've done with Ensign Peak, including, let's remember, money we donated as well for decades.
So
So what it's about, so what it's about is how to get that back. Now we've got actually in our stake, we have some modeling of really powerful and effective ways to do that. Our state leadership have been very refugee service oriented for years. We've had major efforts from our stake and people visiting refugees in France, supporting people at the Sangatte camp, working with refugees here. And I spoke recently to my stake president, who, you know, I'm in this sort of larger scale war of attrition, it feels like, asking simply one of my 3 questions to him and to the First Presidency is, why is this £5 million given to the Humanitarian Aid Fund by British saints for international humanitarian aid still in a bank account in Britain, just earning more money? And he has never been able to answer that adequately, and the First Presidency declined to answer that question when I asked it in my excommunication appeal letter. So they have been asked. I met with the state president recently because he needed to tell me that after 4 months of deliberation, the First Presidency have decided to continue to go with excommunicating me. And his defense to me, again asking that question, was, well, actually, I've asked and I got. And which is great. So he said he has been very generous in how the stake has handled welfare needs of local members. And he's also requested quite large amounts of money, many thousands of pounds, for projects that are humanitarian projects that our stake has been pioneering. And so part of that, I'm wondering if, well, that's maybe the little tiny amount of money that came out of the 5 million. Now, always with this caveat, the money you give to humanitarian aid does not necessarily end up in LDS charities, because they do separate fundraising for that from millionaires and other people.
Absolutely.
They have other donors. So at no point, they've never demonstrated or shown any accounts whatsoever that what we give as humanitarian aid is actually going to that charity. Some of it may be, but we know already that the money is all considered as one pot, tithing or whatever. In which case we have a vested interest. We have given, even if you're inactive from the church now, over the years, you have contributed to that money. You have a right to know what it's being spent on. We have donated to those funds. So here's, I've basically, we've framed a letter which kind of outlines this financial context and then suggests and requests from local leaders. You could send it to any local leader. And we are already finding that actually, if you involve the female leaders of stakes, they tend to make sure that more ethical things start to happen. So definitely, kind of, if you're going to send a letter or request or consult with state leaders about any of this, please CC the High Council and the State Relief Society Presidency, because they meet in councils together now, and that can really be a bit of a game changer.
Yeah, get the women in the room.
Yeah. So here's the letter. It's not too long, but it kind of says what needs to be saying, and it suggests some of these possibilities that we can work with here. Dear State Presidency or whoever, thank you for sharing with us the letter from the Europe Area Presidency, presumably referring to, while not naming, Russia's invasion of Ukraine and calling for a day of prayer and fasting. It states, quote, "One of the divinely appointed missions of the Church is to care for those in need. We are grateful and stand in awe as we contemplate the generosity of so many of you across the area who have contacted us to offer support. All who feel a desire to serve and contribute are invited to coordinate their efforts with their stake presidency or for multi-stake projects under the leadership of the Area 70 in their jurisdiction." So we are being invited to formulate efforts here, which is wonderful, and an opportunity for us to get involved. Please be reassured that welfare and self-reliance services in the area level have already identified possible relief projects and will continue to observe new developments and identify ways to provide help to those in need. We are grateful for the goodness, love, and genuine care we see and feel from so many. We are also grateful for the generous donations to the Church's humanitarian or fast offering funds that enable us to help those in need, close quote. Of course, there is no accounting that they've actually used any of those funds for any bit. So the letter continues. We appreciate this invitation to coordinate with you regarding our contributions to humanitarian aid efforts to help people suffering because of this war. We are among many thousands of other British Latter-day Saints who have contributed over many years to the International Humanitarian Aid Fund to resource the church to meet the needs of people in desperate need, as they are now in our region of the world. As we can see from the church's financial declarations to the Charity Commission, the donations of the British Saints to the Humanitarian Aid Fund have been more than £500,000 a year in recent years. The vast majority of that money donors were told was being used for humanitarian aid has been retained rather than spent on the stated purpose, earning interest in a UK bank account for over 5 years now. We now know it's 10. According to page 99 of the declaration for 2019 to 20, the total in that account is now £4,572,000. If donations have continued similarly in 2021, it will now total over 5 million. We've put a screenshot of that breakdown of the money. So this letter involves like a brief bit of education. You know, here is this pot of money, which you probably don't know about, and the link to just click on to get to it. This is a huge sum of humanitarian aid money and represents great sacrifice by many people, often who experience poverty and need themselves. Can you please request and assure us that this money we have already donated for the purpose described in the letter is now going to be used as promised and will be given to organisations and individuals giving humanitarian aid to the victims of the invasion of Ukraine? Can you please confirm that the church will not be soliciting any further donations for humanitarian aid from UK and Irish Latter-day Saints until the money we already gave you has actually been used to help these people? Can you please confirm that any money given now in response to this appeal for humanitarian aid for the people of Ukraine will actually be spent meeting their needs rather than sitting in a bank account for years, or spent on commercial investments like the Alder Castle Business Centre the church purchased in London in 2019 with £103 million of sacred funds as a money-making investment, probably part of the church's Ensign Peak commercial investments portfolio, now estimated to be valued at $140 billion. Yours sincerely. So that is a lot of what we've talked about here in a nutshell. It informs these local leaders of some of the context here and the scale of wealth the church has already got. It informs them that there is a specifically British pot of money here, and it's challenging them ethically as well as practically to ensure that the money is actually being given as it should be in the way that Julian is sort of appealing for the church to do in an ethical way.
Okay, so what do we want you to do? We want you to go to the link in the description. We want you to get a copy of that letter, send it to your stake president, include your State Relief Society president and the Stake High Council, if you can get their information, and let's see what happens. I think in a nutshell, is that fair, everyone?
And our stake president's experience is they will say yes if you ask. And I think part of what we're aware of is the general fog of ignorance that the church members and leaders are always told this idea that we're in a shortage situation, that if you don't give now, there is no money to spend. You know, we don't hoard money. We don't have huge wealth already donated to these funds. Sharon Eubank spoke in last general conference about her experience as head of the humanitarian efforts in the church and kind of appealed, saying, you know, your donations make a difference. Please, effectively, we've got to keep giving more when they haven't spent what they've got. So I think that's a way to access a large amount of money for these people in need immediately. It's an opportunity for us all to encourage our stake leaders in all of our little areas to be conscious of the ethical foundation and context of this situation, and that what they are telling the members is untrue, unfortunately, and to start to have some process of accountability. But certainly just to ask, because they're saying yes, And pretty soon, even if we can't, in a sense, control or encourage or manage that money being sent to charities to work in Ukraine, we can all do that personally. It won't be long before there are millions of Ukrainian refugees in every country in Europe. And they are going to be on our doorsteps. And this invitation from the area presidency is a massive way in to say, yes, let's coordinate with our local leaders. Let's help these refugees in our own communities. Can we have some more of that money from that we can read about in the Charity Commission report?
So ask your leaders, your church leaders, how you can coordinate and how you can access those funds that LDS charities are willing to give, because they are giving it, and they've given it in our stake, and I've seen examples of that.
Brilliant. Jane, please. Sorry. Jane, you had your hand up?
3 million years to unmute there. I think we, like I said earlier, have a God who is creative. This is what, if we ever believed in the gift of discernment, this is what it's for. Nemo has a petition that's doing the rounds, asking for the church leaders to let us donate tithing where we feel impressed to donate it. Let's use those gifts that we were promised that we could access. There are options other than giving your money direct to the church. There is, the letter that Peter has this set letter. Send your own. If you have something else to say, just I just think we can get creative about how we come to the aid of our fellow man. There are people in your area who are part of the Ukrainian community who would love to tell you how to help them. We can sit and debate where we want to send our money. Ask them, they'll tell you. It's simply having conversations about how we can be the best support or ally to that community. And I think the other thing that's just been really, I've been really aware of is, we're going to have a refugee crisis. It's going to continue to get worse. If you feel that your area, your country is not doing enough, contact your politicians and local leaders and tell them you expect more. Increase the number of refugees they'll let into your country, and just open your mouth and let that gift of discernment do its job.
I think I would say, in summing all this up, and I think I will sum it all up now in simply saying, for too long the church has said to us, give us your money, we know what is best to do with it, we will use it. And what we are now saying is, no, you take responsibility yourself as an individual for your money and do the best you can with it. Do the best with your time that you can. Stop following this Pharisaical idea that you will be dictated to in everything, because the same is a slothful servant. That's what we're taught. So let's not be slothful servants. Let's not be dictated to. Let's not be told what to do. Let's go out and do it ourselves. Let's go out and make the best difference we can. So from all of us, thank you very much. Have a great evening. If anyone's watching in Ukraine or any part of the world out there, be safe. And Slava, have a good one.
Yeah.